Everyone's heard about the tragic story that happens in the suburban home in the neighborhood. The youngest child finds her way, as her parents are working, back to the parents' bedroom. He's looking around. He's going through their drawers, through their cabinets. He's just curious. He goes and at a young age of 4 or 5, he's looking for stuff that's shiny, stuff that attracts their attention. So he opens a drawer and he sees something shiny and metal, and he picks it up. It's very heavy. And as all kids do, they like to poke and prod and pull at toys. That's why we give them toys that we do. He looks at the toy. He notices levers on it and triggers and sometimes little spinny wheels on it, and he gets distracted and he starts pulling, and the next day you see in the paper, tragedy struck in suburban home as a young toddler was killed or injured in a gun accident. The gun was just kept out in a drawer somewhere that the kid had access to. He found it and pulled the trigger not knowing what it was. We may not have all heard that story, but it does happen. From the Philadelphia Inquirer in Philly, a 4-year-old was found dead by his brother in their parents' closet. He had gone in their closet and checked in one of their drawers and had found a firearm and had inevitably pulled the trigger while he was messing with it and killed himself on accident, not knowing what it was. This tragic story can be avoided. That's where I'm going to talk today. I'm going to talk about gun safety and how we are charged as individuals with owning firearms as part of our constitutional rights, but how we can keep others safe by knowing how to handle it, how to store it, how to use it, and how to save lives. So first, when we're talking about gun safety courses, we need to know what they are. Gun safety courses are just short-term courses. They teach us the ins and outs of how to handle a firearm, precautions to take, safety requirements for them, how to store them, how to use them properly. We need to try and implement these. My action is going to be to implement them so that every time someone purchases a firearm for the very first time, they have to take a gun safety course. It is a requirement by the state. So my goal by the end of this will be to convince you that we need to implement this statewide across Georgia, so that in order to buy a firearm, you have to take a gun safety course. My main focus of this speech will be to look at accidental and deaths and injuries, not just in the younger kids, but throughout all ages. And speaking of, there were 582 deaths and 11,529 injuries, all accidental, in the state of Georgia in 2012. This boggles my mind. I never knew this. There's almost 12,000 accidental gun injuries, all similar to the story that I just told about the 4-year-old. This all came from the National Institute of Health from the U.S. So that's what we want to implement. We want to implement gun safety courses. Why do we want to do that, and how are my next points. So we need to look at how are we going to implement this? How are we going to solve this problem? And more of why. In Georgia, this past year, there was recorded 1,543 deaths a year. This can be avoided. One way to look at how we're going to implement this is looking at youth hunting safety courses. They're very similar. They all teach gun safety, and they're already implemented. There's something you can go out and do right now. So looking at Georgia's youth hunting safety courses, they're $7.50 a piece. There are 12 hours of firearm safety classes where they go into a classroom with other people and they have a certified instructor, typically an ex-police officer, teach them how to handle a firearm, how to shoot a firearm, safety of it, to keep the muzzle away, keep your finger off the trigger and off the trigger guard until you're ready to shoot. Simple safety stuff. Also, how to store your firearm. So if there are little kids in the area, don't store it in some place that they can reach. Higher up, out of reach, in a gun safe, locked. And then after this, they actually go out in the field and they use a .22 rifle, and the instructors teach them how to shoot and show them how to shoot using that. And this is a requirement in order to go hunting as a youth. This is a good example of something that we can introduce and use as a template in order to implement these gun safety courses. Now, more on to how we're going to do this. We have our template for what we could use. It's very cost efficient, very cheap. Pretty much anybody can do that. It's only $7.50 for it. And it can be done in a weekend or even a day. So there's our template. Next, we can look at more logistics. Who would be teaching it and where? As for the where, police stations and police precincts and stations and government buildings are a good place. They are already owned by the government. And as far as who could teach them, ex-police officers or police officers that want to do this on the side as well would be a good option. They're already trained with firearms, so that would be a very good option for that. Now that we've seen the tragedy of why we need to do this, we've seen the statistics of injuries and deaths, we've seen how we can do this, the templates we can use, the motivations, and how we can do this. Now we need to look at what we can do. This isn't just talking about how sad it is and then ending it. We have a call to action that we need to have. How can we help this? How can we implement this? There's a lot of steps needed, and it's going to be a long process in order to get them implemented, and it probably won't be easy, but the first call to action and step that we can do is to email our representatives in Georgia. So start off with the congressman of each district, with whichever one you're in, you can email them, and then that will be our way to enact this. In conclusion, there's a lot of horrible things that have happened, and tragedies and accidents, and I feel that the way to help this is to implement gun safety courses before purchasing your first firearm. I feel that we can avoid all these tragedies and deaths if we do that.